Welcome to the Unzip Mind podcast. My name is Nick Smith. I'm here with Greg Minikis and Dylan Jessen.
Hello.
What's up, guys?
Okay, welcome back.
Good to be back here. Every time we have a guest and then we come back just the three of us, it's like, all right, guests, especially somebody like Bria, I feel super comfortable. We're vibing. But once it's back to the three of us, I'm like, oh, zero. I ain't trying to impress nobody. It's just us three jokers, just getting coffee and joking around until we're ready to record.
That's how it all started.
Feels good, man. It's good to be back.
Today's kind of a fun topic. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence, kind of how that differs from, cognitive.
Other types of intelligence. Yeah, intelligence is a pretty heavily researched concept in psychology. There's many theories. There's the idea of intelligence just as like processing speed. Someone who has more intelligence has more cognitive processing speed. That can be true in a lot of cases. There's the idea of like general intelligence, like this like G factor. So like overall, like your math, reading comprehension, being able to speak eloquently, all that sort of is general intelligence. I really like Gardner's theory of like multiple intelligences, that two people could be equally intelligent and they're in completely different ways. Right? We were talking about that earlier. I think you have it pulled up there.
Yep, I do actually. But yeah, we were talking about all the different intelligences, and in his theories, he like originally laid out 8 of them. I believe we were talking about it earlier. There's 9.
Yeah.
Has, like one more has been added.
Yeah, the 9th intelligence is like transcendental intelligence or something. So that's a little vaguer, and I don't know too much about it. But
no, we can talk about that at a later time.
Yeah.
Maybe dive deep into that. Who knows?
That'd be cool.
But like we were talking about, he has a list of like visual, linguistic, and logical, body, musical, interpersonal.
Interpersonal.
And intrapersonal.
Yeah. Yep.
And naturalistic.
Yeah. So there's a lot we can say about all those, but I would think that emotional intelligence resides somewhere in between interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence, between those two. And I think both those two have to, like, if you are to intelligently engage with yourself and sort of know yourself, if you're going to intelligently engage with other people in a sensitive way, compassionate way, in an effective way, if you want to get what you want out of life and your relationships, you have to understand other people's feelings. And, if you can be emotionally intelligent and not be a good person, so you can be aware of other people's feelings to manipulate them. But I think if you are truly in my opinion, if you're truly emotionally intelligent, you'll recognize that like what we want out of life is to like be genuine and be kind to others. So hopefully our emotional intelligence will help us to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think it kind of goes hand in hand of being able to see that in other people and feel their emotions as well as internally knowing yours.
Yeah.
Well, it's really cool that that's how you guys feel about it. And that's how we talk about it, because that is our like natural understanding, or intuitively like that's your understanding of emotional intelligence. But it is like that's quite literally its definition of emotional intelligence, is that you have intelligence and understanding of other people's emotions, but you also have understanding and control and over your emotions, right? So like that is I would very much agree with you how it's like kind of in between that inter and intrapersonal.
Yeah, I actually I want to just dwell on that, those two types of intelligence, and intrapersonal, because I think emotional intelligence isn't just having intra and inter, because you can have interpersonal intelligence in terms of being able to conversate smoothly and like communicate, like say things in an eloquent way, to sort of have street smarts, like sort of know the dynamics of interactions and relationships without necessarily having emotional intelligence. So I think emotional intelligence is part of interpersonal or intrapersonal intelligence, but it's not all of it.
No, I think it's a mix, and then it's its own thing, but it comes from having both of them, because like I feel like to have the ability to be interpersonal, like to know other people and the workings and the dynamics of other people and be able to work within that dynamic smoothly, you have to have emotional intelligence, because you have to understand like how people are reacting to your presence of your entering like their space or whatnot, like, and how they're interacting with each other.
I agree to an extent, but let me just use my own experience as an example. Okay. So perfect. I find that I have some measure of emotional intelligence. I can be working on the unit when there's lots of patients who are having lots of really powerful emotions, grief, fear, anxiety, anger, and I feel like I'm able to to some degree, to whatever degree they keep me employed at the hospital, and nothing, bad usually happens when I'm working, to help them manage that effectively and compassionately. So I feel like I have some emotional intelligence. I am not good at like schmoozing, networking. I don't think I'm very good at reading a room. I don't know exactly what it comes down to. Maybe it's like my own discomfort with eye contact, that I don't like really let my gaze roam a room as naturally as the average person might. But I feel like there is an aspect of interpersonal intelligence that I do not have, and maybe will never have. It's just in my personality, but I do have some emotion. So that's sort of like a distinction. Intrapersonal intelligence, I feel like that would be a lot about emotions, though, like knowing yourself, knowing how you really feel about things, and not just
how you react, like how you choose to react, and like if you have the ability to be like, okay, that I'm upset about,
that affects
I'm
me.
going to choose not to be upset in this moment,
right,
because this is not the appropriate place to do that. But when I'm in a space that I will be upset. But I think being able to like compartmentalize in a healthy way, right? Because you don't want to compartmentalize and like block that off. That's not healthy. That I wouldn't say is very emotionally intelligent.
That's a topic. Let's talk about
being
that.
able to compartmentalize in a healthy way and being like, this moment right here, what the situation I'm not comfortable with. This is making me upset. How I want to react is not appropriate.
Right.
So I'm a chalk this off right here. And then in this appropriate space, wherever it may be, right, I might let it out there. Okay. I think that shows a lot of and I'm just like, I agree with you. I think interpersonal is really where emotional intelligence lives. To be able to know yourself really well. And like everybody flies off the handle. Everybody has their moments. You have to have your moments. No one's perfect, but to be able to check yourself and also know when things just aren't for you, and you don't have to oppose onto other people your emotions, where it's like, if you're uncomfortable with something, really easy for yourself to remove, instead of trying to change everybody's and like let everybody else know, I'm uncomfortable, you need to stop what you're doing. They don't. You can move. Like, you can leave that situation. Right.
And being able to,
that is my opinion.
No, I think that's a good compartmentalization is, I think, a really good topic to talk about with emotional intelligence. Because, on the one hand, there's what you were just talking about, which is there's a situation, I have sort of instinctive feelings about it. Like maybe I feel disrespected and that gives me a feeling of anger, or thoughts, feelings that we talked about that. I perceive that I've been disrespected. So then I feel anger as a result. So being able to compartmentalize that emotion so that it's not ruling my behavior is, I think that's part of emotional intelligence. Another form of compartmentalization with emotional intelligence is like, we're working on the unit. Sometimes we hear patients say things that are really heinous, terrible. We get lots of wonderful, great people on the unit who seem like they're very, ethical and they treat everybody the same. But I've also heard a lot of sort of racism and other forms of bigotry on the unit. That's just true of any population. Like within any, give me 1 million humans, you're going to find some pretty distasteful people within that. It's just patient population, non-patients, just everybody. So I've heard really heinous things, but I've still had to stay there. So I couldn't just walk away because I have to be there for everybody's safety and to get people what they need. So though anytime there is any kind of like bigotry or something or harassment or bullying, I always address it immediately and we make sure that it stops. I do still have to treat that person with some respect because I'm there for them. They're locked in a psych hospital or, locked in a locked detox area, and I have to still work with them and be kind to them to a degree. I certainly can't be cruel to them. So there is some compartmentalization there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, you have to, it's you have to be able to like check your emotions, and be able to work within a space where you're not letting your emotions control your reactions and control your interactions throughout your day. Right, you're able to like meet each situation as it is and not as you are perceiving things because you were slighted 30 minutes ago with somebody, right? So like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm working on it still to this day. Like out in public, like in situations where it is expected, it's an expectation of me when whatever work I'm doing, right? And like I've had a lot of roles in my life. I'm very fortunate that I've had like a lot of different experiences with working with a lot of different populations. And when it's an expectation, it's really easy. I'm gonna be honest. Like that's like, okay,
It's like a duty.
yeah, it's a duty of me to not put myself first, right? That's it's an expectation in this role. Okay, so it's really easy to compartmentalize that. But in my private life, out in the world, I will tell you, driving. I'm from the East Coast.
You get some road rage?
I'm from the East Coast. I learned how to drive on the East Coast. Okay. Yeah, I get road rage all the time. And I don't know their person. And this is a very simple thing, right? This may not be a big deal to people. It's a very simple, but this is just an analogy or an example. It's very small, but I don't know what that person's going through. I don't know if they're in a rush because there's an emergency at home or
Somebody's in the car, pregnant, about to give birth.
no one knows, right?
Yeah,
No
yeah.
one knows. Or, they could be having a bad day. Something could be happening, or they are simply just not good drivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They exist. I might be doing something wrong. Let's be real. I may not be realizing that I'm driving a little faster, or you know what I mean? There's other things. And I'll get annoyed, and then it'll bother me for a while, and I'll get anxious, and I'm going to get worried. And then because you're annoyed, you're driving more irrationally.
Right.
So that little moment where you let your emotions win, it just ruined your past, that next 35, 45 hour to do. Depends on how you are as a person, how long you hold on to grudges. Everybody's different. You could hold that shit all day long. I choose not to. But it definitely messes with me for the next couple minutes.
Is it that you're preoccupied with that feeling of anger, or is it that
pissed.
or is it that you notice the anger and then you get down on yourself for being angry?
No, I'm just pissed.
you
I'm just
feel-
like,
okay.
you, how dare you? Right? You cut me off? No. Or the other thing that really bothers me, when you're driving 25 miles an hour under the speed limit and you're in like the passing lane
In the left lane, yeah.
and there's people.
Yeah.
There's people. You're trying to do the decent thing and not pass on the wrong side of the road, but they're just hanging out, and you're just like, So anyway,
So I what you're saying reminds me of. I wasn't trying to cut you off.
Go ahead.
What you're saying reminds me of just like my own interest in the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
So if I am driving and something happens that annoys me, maybe somebody flips me off, or somebody doesn't use their turn signal and they just like cut me off quickly. And I've said this a lot since I moved to Portland. I've been like, do you know what a turn signal is? Do you know what it's
They
for?
don't.
I don't know.
Portland, please. It's on the left side of your steering wheel.
It's probably not just Portland, but anyway, so
bad.
that happens. I feel that flash of anger. You know what I often like? I realize shortly, like immediately after I try to realize this, is that it's like I feel the sensation in my body. There is now, where there was not before, there is now a hot feeling in my gut, and there is like a tightness like in my back or in my neck or in my head, because this anger has caused blood vessels to do certain things. It's caused muscles to do certain things, and that's why, like in that situation, I always just try to like breathe and relax. So it's like my understanding of my own sort of emotional intelligence, my own emotional world, I mediate a lot through the body, and that's been effective for me, I think.
That's when I notice I'm doing it, I'm like, oh
Yeah.
do it. And I take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Well, and to go back to using it as like a strength, or you're talking about at the hospital, that's where I really notice a lot, I guess, in my own life, because like I don't have the degrees or the process of degrees like you guys have, to use you as an example, or generally in our field, but I had decent amount of life experience and then been in the hospital a long time. But using emotional intelligence, especially when we're de-escalating patients, is like massively useful, because we have to have very delicate conversations a lot of times with patients and their stays and their treatment and medications and
like their behavior. And this is grown adults we're talking to.
Yeah. And if they can even process what we are saying with how psychotic they are.
Some can't, yeah.
But we might say one thing or one small word, and you can feel that like shift in them, or that trigger in them. And so you have to use your emotional intelligence a lot to feel how they are feeling and kind of ride those waves with them a little bit.
I feel like having a level of emotional intelligence is like your inner GPS of conversations. And it's like your little roadmap, like at least in the context of what we do, right?
Yeah.
Because that is like when we're talking with people, it's it's being able to navigate many different kind of conversations
in their most fragile
in their
state.
very fragile state successfully, right? Because in one day, we could have a conversation with an individual going through detox for their first time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different conversation than I'm going to have with somebody going through their detox for their 5th, 6th, 8th time. They both end in the same kind of context. They both end in a good way, in a positive light, or at least in a light that both parties are leaving feeling something.
Hope, inspiration for the recovery.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
That's a very different conversation than I'm going to have with somebody who is deeply psychotic. And you're just having a conversation with them.
Yeah.
But when they are that sick, you also have to be like very cautious, because you don't know what is going to be a trigger, and you're still understanding that patient's trauma background and whatnot. And so you have to go slowly down that road, right? But being able to navigate that in a successful way is like, there's textbooks, there's studies about schizophrenia.
But there's so many layers to it. Each one is so different.
It's so much. It's so fun.
Each person, it is, because it's like, you mentioned it earlier. It's like a little puzzle,
How do I
and it's an emotional puzzle.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, and I will say that's where like the really, this is something that like fills my cup. All right, very much so. It is working with these individuals in any kind of context. And you can watch it, like, because Nick, you brought it up a little earlier. You see the switch.
Yeah.
You see that like switch turn on, especially with a lot of the individuals that are in the most critical states. Those individuals are usually the most marginalized individuals, which means they're most unheard individuals. It's those individuals that's where, when I say it's so fun, I'm not trying to say that like I have this twisted sense of humor or enjoyment of that. What is the fun part is watching the glow come on. And the interaction from there, like, oh, this is happening. Like there's a connection where you're diving in and you're asking more questions than the average person in a way that you're actually seeking an answer that they want to get out. Right? I don't know if I put that right.
You could feel the trust.
Yeah.
You can feel that, you can see that they are seeing that you're showing interest, genuine interest. And for people who have been marginalized, they rarely feel that. They rarely have people genuinely interested in just sitting and talking
or even
with them.
believe it.
Right, believe that it's possible for anyone to be interested. Like, why would anyone be interested in me? I've been rejected by society. Now, to your point about it being fun. So many aspects of the job are not fun. When someone is very depressed and very psychotic, angry, it's not fun being in their presence. I have to be there, but that's difficult. I feel very bad for that person. Whatever difficulty is happening on the unit that I have to manage pales in comparison to the amount of difficulty that person is going through by having this chronic mental illness, by being very depressed, dealing with grief, a recent loss, something like that. That is not fun. What is fun is figuring out how can I connect with this person, because it's kind of like making friends. It's like, oh, you're into anime? That's cool. We've been working together for a week and I didn't know that about you. Let's get into it. Let's talk. And then so that's fun. And then the fun just gets better and better because you build this relationship more and more. So then every time you pass them in the hall, they're like, oh, hey, what's up? Oh, yeah, hey, you should check out Ashita no Joe. It's this anime from the 80s. What? I never heard of that. And it's just a brief, and then you're having those interactions with that person all day, especially multiply that by 10, because you got 10 people who you've built a great relationship with over the course of the weeks. You're just getting fist bumps and getting like people just asking you, like telling you about stuff and asking you about stuff all day. And that is fun. That is a fun workflow.
And that's honestly the only thing like I hear. When you said it's kind of like it is. It's you're making friends. That's what's happening
with therapeutic boundaries, because we're not giving out phone numbers, emails.
But that I don't think needs to even be said right there, right? Because it is like, we work in a context, and we have to keep those boundaries, and we do. Doesn't mean you're not a friend, right? So in all the most important sense, yes. Yeah. So you're building relationships with people. There's like, I don't know. I actually was having a conversation with somebody about these different kind of labels and like context of these boundaries that certain labels put on. Like, so like friendship doesn't necessarily, to me, the concept is like, you are no longer somebody I didn't know. Right? So you are no longer somebody who is simply what's considered a stranger or somebody who's unknown to me. We have created a bond where there is trust in any way. So that's a friendship. That's a bond there.
It's a good definition. I like to think of it that way because I like to be friends with cats and trees and shit.
One of my best homies is 4-legged and he's like 70 pounds. His name's Calvin.
I have a succulent. That's my friend for sure. But I just, I am cautious with the word friend when talking with patients because I don't want them to think we are now friends forever. Like I'm going to be your friend outside. I'm here for you, bud. Yeah. I am here for you until you discharge, and then I really can't be because I can't give out my information. So like that's all I mean. Just like there's like a true friend who's there for you night and day, thick and thin. 365 whereas we are homies in the context of the hospital. So that's all I mean. But like I rather use your definition of friendship because again, birds, rocks, trees, randos on the street. Like let's all be friends. I want to be friends with everybody. So in the context of the hospital, I feel like emotional intelligence serves me in many ways, but one in particular is like people talk about like, oh, I can feel your energy. Like I'm sensing this aggressive energy. I've always, I feel like that's not the best way to think about that. It's a good way to think about it, but it's not the most accurate. I think the most accurate way to think about this kind of interpersonal intelligence, like being able to feel someone's energy, is you're picking up on small cues, tiny micro cues. We're talking about something, and I bring up, I don't know.
Are you about to bring up the forehead again?
You
were about to bring up the forehead.
Yeah. I was going to get there eventually.
No, you were.
So like, I bring it out. So we're talking. Me and the patient are talking. I bring up something, and I notice an immediate little crease in their forehead. And I'm like, oh, like tiny crease. But like I'm so attuned to it because I'm used to dealing with people with very kind of volatile emotions because of their mental illness that like I'm really looking out for this kind of thing. So let's say I mention like the county or the state. And they're like, oh, like state. Like maybe they have paranoia around police or like the FBI or something. So I say that and I see that crease. I'm like, oh, I will avoid that topic in the future. And that's like, I think that can build on, with other things.
I completely agree with you, but I also disagree with you. Okay. And that's just my own personal, we can go on rabbit holes of this.
Energy.
I'll tell you, I'll have situations where my back is to them and they come and sit down in the room and I feel that heaviness or that energy, and that's personally, that's me.
Well, so Greg,
many people think of it like that, and you might be right.
So, I have a question for you on this. Cause so you and I work a lot together, right? We have that, we get to do a lot together actually. And I've heard you bring up in many different contexts, and that's why, just so everybody knows, I'm not trying to dig on you. I've just heard him bring this up in many different contexts of the forehead crease. And I've heard him bring up what he is very attuned to when he's speaking with people in general and in our work context too. Do you think the pandemic played into one reason you're so tuned into people's muscle features and like muscular, like what their face is doing? Or have you always been just very attuned to the face?
It was interesting because I was talking about the forehead crease before when I started doing training, when I started teaching new employees at the hospital. I started talking about the forehead crease before COVID. So like, not, I wouldn't say always, but like I was starting to, after like being full-time MHD for a while, like I started to cultivate that, my sort of, not theory, but like my thinking about there's a lot of information that we communicate through our foreheads. So, but it's interesting that you mentioned that because after COVID started, whenever I would teach, I would mention like, since we have masks, all the information that we're communicating
really
facially would be up here. So not for me, but that's when I really started to talk about it, was after COVID.
Yeah. So, because I just find it interesting because like I'm in the same kind of school of thought as Nick is, right? Like I like don't disagree with you, but I don't agree with you because yes, we do express a lot through our face. There's a lot of times though I'm not necessarily looking at an individual's face. I'm feeling I'm picking something up. There's a nervous energy. Or there's something that you can feel that's not being said. Yeah. Right? There's a wall. And you can feel that first, and then what I see is the body.
Yeah, and I add kind of what I see, like what Greg explained on like facial things. I add that into what I've already kind of like
and I pick up
to what I feel.
I pick up because I think we've had conversations about this, but I think not on the show. I think this is more like while we were out having lunch and stuff. But I'm very cued into words and how things are being said. I'm very much a parable person, right? Like paraverbal. I'm very much a paraverbal person. Like, and I don't know why that is per se. I've just always been very much clued into like how people are saying things.
It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah. And that is something that I pick up. So it's like first comes the energy. Like when I let's say you walk into the space, you're like, ooh. You know, I think everybody has that experience when they walk into the room like something happened in here that was weird. Right? So
right before I walked in, it's like the fart stink.
Yeah.
But
it's the spiritual. It's the spiritual fart stink.
The spiritual fart. Yeah.
So, but you walk in something like that, or you know, there could be a happy too. You know, you walk into an environment, you're like, oh, cool, and it's like light and it's airy. And like this, I'm comfortable instantly, right? But it's that, and then how somebody's saying something. That I'm like, that's when those are the two first things I clue into when I'm like, oh, this is going to be, I either buckle up because this might be a tense kind of situation, like how they're saying it might be tense, or you can hear that they're withholding something from that conversation.
So there are a lot of paraverbal cues there. So there's like the rate of speech, there's how you emphasize certain words over others, it's your tone, like there's a lot of clues there. So I mean, I'm of two minds. One is I'm a bit of a mystical person. I have done spiritual practices, and I believe, I think the concept of chi is a real thing. So I believe in these things. So part of me wants to believe that like all of us can sense energy, sense the energy of a room, sense the energy coming from a person. So that may be. My other mind, my sort of scientific analytical mind, is that what we think is sensing energy is actually we're picking up on tons of micro cues. So it's not just the forehead crease, it's the paraverbal, it's maybe the person enters the room behind you, you haven't even seen them yet, but maybe without realizing it, you hear their breathing and you hear that it's a little faster, or there's something about the rate of their steps. They sit down heavily, and that like flump of them sitting down clues you in. So that's just a theory. So it's not this like metaphysical like energy sense.
And I think it's a theory based on people because I don't think it's I don't think everybody can. I don't think it. I think emotional intelligence in general is a skill that everybody can work on.
Yes.
But
Yes.
The sense of feeling energies, I think that's just not every individual. And so that's just my thing.
Sure.
It's just like sleep paralysis. For me, sleep paralysis is a little bit more of the spiritual side for me rather than completely the scientific explanation of sleep paralysis. And again, we can go down that rabbit hole another day, but because I experience it and I've experienced it for so long, like it's just different. It feels different for me. And same as for me for emotional intelligence and like feeling people's energy and like being able to read that.
Well, whether or not you believe that emotional intelligence, part of it is being able to sense energy or just picking up on lots of micro cues, it's definitely really important for like our line of work.
Well, check it out. So there's a couple things. One, gentlemen, we have put a couple flags in some rabbit holes.
Plant some flags.
We have some flag. We have some things that we need to circle round and bound on. Yeah. Which I love. And this is like honestly why I love having our conversations. But in like a kind of a little gap, a little like bridge gap here thing. I think the spiritual side, I agree. Like emotional intelligence is something that you can learn and that you can work on, and you just have to be really mindful. You have to work on some mindfulness and be mindful of how you are feeling and address how you're feeling in moments and be okay with that first. Be like,
start with yourself.
I'm heated. Why am I heated? Like first ask why. Is it a justifiable reason? Is it not a justifiable reason? And then you need to be able to take yourself out of situations. That's what's really hard.
Yeah.
Is you got to be able to take yourself out of a situation and realize and recognize that don't react to somebody, but give them that space in the conversation. Give them the space to have their feelings because they're very valid as your feelings are valid. Their feelings need to be valid, and you need to give them that space. And then you start growing into that emotion where you start going to realize like, this is that energy. This is that emotion that I'm feeling. And that's where it's like kind
of like quickly processing it.
Yeah. And that's where like I agree with Nick. So part of it is being empathetic, right? Like that's kind of what a baseline kind of what we are talking about as well is that natural empathy, being able to connect and put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and not be sympathetic, because that's not.
Yeah.
You're turning their sorrow into yours, but being empathetic and being able to selflessly put yourself in them and be like, that does suck, right? And then I think the energy part of it is very real. You just have to be, the more open you are to it, the more you start to understand it. When you and that's where like that scientific, because I hear you so much too, Greg. Like I do agree with you. Like there are so many cues that you're picking up on as well visually, like their body language, how they're moving, how they may be reacting to your movement. That's another thing too. That's really big. Like if I'm walking in and you're backing up at the same time, you're trying to protect your space, right? If I'm getting close and you're guarding like this and you start to wrap around like your vital organ areas and hugging yourself.
Oh, I'm definitely going to give you a little more space.
Yeah. Buddy. There's been you're protecting your body, your being.
I want you to feel safe, so I'm just going to back up.
And unfortunately we see a lot of that behavior. And I don't know if you guys have realized this, but if you're like, cool, introduce yourself, let them know who you are, do your thing, and then you keep this
calm face,
real calm, real
calm
soothe.
voice.
Yep. And you just don't intrude. Let them know, keep doing your thing. When you offer that space that's not been heard, that's when it's and they can breathe.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of how I process it. Right. So it's a mix. Yes, you're picking up on scientific, researched body cues. Yeah. There's also, I think that's a baseline. I think there's a part of emotional intelligence, like, because there's a spectrum. It's not end all be all, like you have it or you don't, right? There's a spectrum of emotional intelligence. I think what you're talking about is definitely one side of it, right? That scientific, the body language, the paraverbals, all that good stuff.
Yeah, measurable.
Measurable. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good way to put it too. The measurables part of it. But then I also think there's more parts of emotional intelligence that are the non-measurable.
Think about robots. Think about AI, right? Like they can create incredible AI right now, but they can't feel love. Right. You know, they can't. There's a certain layer that they can't access. Like that's just how I kind of relate it to.
Yeah, I mean they don't feel the emotions. They don't have the sort of chemical reactions that produce like the feelings that we have.
Well, and that's where
hopefully not.
Well, and that's what the other part too, because if you want to look at because it's just because it's not quantifiable doesn't make it not real, right? Yeah. So because you're talking about the body language, these cues, these micro cues, and what I'm thinking about is, but there's energy, because we're impulses of energy. Like all our neurotransmitters are electrical fires, right? So it's electrical pathways, electrical highways. So we are these bodies of energy. So I think that's the other aspect of emotional intelligence is being able to read other people's energy.
Yeah, it's very common.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What are you gonna say?
I was just, it goes on a little tangent, but still,
go on tangent. Go on.
I love tangents.
Take that walk. Take it.
You guys might know this. It was a museum. Don't remember where, but it was a museum that had two separate flowers or plants, and they would have people go up to one and just say negative stuff and all this negative energy towards it, and it ended up not dying. Yeah, and then the other one, people would just say positive stuff and all affirmations to, and it grew. I don't know if you heard about that, Greg?
I've heard about that. Yeah, I never looked at the research.
I don't remember the details, but it was super interesting.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. Well, I wonder how my plants react, because when I leave Calvin at home, the only reason I use my Alexa, I am sorry, Mom, this is true though. My mom got me my Alexa, and the only reason I use it is to play music for Calvin when I leave the house. I play a lot of like healing music and different like frequencies and like meditation music, and all my plants are right there too. So
they probably love
everyone is just zen out.
Yeah, I mean,
until Dylan comes home.
Yeah, no, and then it's party on.
No, I've heard about that. Like, playing music to your plants. Saying the experiment where like they had one set of people say like the word hate into a glass of water that was freezing, and the other saying love, and like the ice crystallized differently. So like, I haven't looked at that research. Yeah, I've heard that study. I've seen some pictures. I haven't really looked at the research much. I want to believe in that kind of stuff. I don't have evidence for it, and I haven't had deep enough experiences that I can sort of like talk about it existing with confidence. But no, like I said, I'm of two minds. Like I kind of believe both.
Yeah,
No, it's interesting, and there are other aspects. Like in our line of work, emotional intelligence is key, but there are other aspects of life too. Like as a if you're any kind of what were you saying?
I was just anything dealing with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Any kind of customer service, any kind of like leadership. If you're in any kind of leadership position, being able to manage your own emotions so that you can present that sort of like strong, reliable front so that people believe in your leadership, that's important. And then much more important, in my opinion, than like presenting yourself a certain way is tuning into the emotions of the people who you're leading.
Yeah. But that's like, I 100% agree with you. I think to be not just a successful leader, 100%, to be a successful leader, to do what we do, to work in a therapeutic realm, in any therapeutic realm, to be a good therapist. Like, think about the shitty therapists you've had. Because let's be real, every career, I'm not just calling out therapists, every career has their bad people, right?
Sure, yeah.
Think of if anybody's ever had a bad therapist, think about it. You couldn't connect with them. That's not necessarily because of your lack of emotional intelligence, because you're the one in therapy. It's not your job to do that.
Right.
It's their inability, right, to do it. Anyway, I think to be a successful member in society is you have to have some emotional intelligence, because that's when you can understand that not everyone's going to have the best day. So somebody might speak to you a little more abruptly than you think. Instead of interjecting your own opinion on somebody else's life or whatnot, maybe take yourself out real quick and be like, maybe something happened that set them off or whatnot, and just accept that, not everyone's gonna have a great day, and that's okay, and just keep it moving. And you don't have to make somebody's days worse, because they might have slighted you.
That's a better society when everyone is trying to cultivate that emotional intelligence. I'm not sure what kind of content you guys see on social media, but I do see posts from time to time about like, we need to teach our kids emotional intelligence, videos of like I've seen videos of like a dad sort of coaching his daughter, because sort of teaching her stuff about emotional insight. Like, that is the kind of thing that I want to see more of. That builds a healthy society, I think. We want it to be in the culture that we are managing our own emotions. We are, like you said, like giving other people their space for their feelings, and also giving ourselves the space to feel what we're feeling, process it, and then react, rather than just like input, feeling, immediate reaction, because that could be very maladaptive. That could, that if it's anger, that can come out very hurtful. Giving yourself a second to process, to really feel what you feel, to really consider how you want to react, and then responding. I think that's a healthy response.
I do too, and that's like that's the thing. We're not doing anybody justice. So we have turned into a society somehow, some way. And this is solely my opinion. This is solely my belief. This is like what you were saying, Greg.
It's a generalization. Like
this is from what I've witnessed personally, is that we are at a point right now where people who are happy, right? And we live in that happiness, and we're like, I've made it. I'm happy. Some people will reach out and try to bring other people up, but that's hard. It's really hard to do, because you have to give your energy. You have to give your happiness to help others, right?
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Nope. So you have to give a little bit. You have to be willing to do that, which is fine. But you can't do it for everybody, because then you're empty, right? And that's very fair. You have to protect your energy. The problem is, though, right now, and how I've seen it, is people who are down, people who are upset, we have this thing where we allow ourselves all to get pulled down, and we're all willing to be pulled down, and we're in this society where it's okay to get pulled down because we don't have enough people helping to pull up, right? And we have enough people will continue to make themselves feel better and have this false climb. They continue to put the people down who they see as less than them in any way, and that way they can climb a little higher, but they're not truly happy. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Right. I'm not sure if I've seen that dynamic. I mean, we definitely lived in a more sort of socially isolated society, more atomized. Many of us spend a lot more time sort of on screens, alone on social media than we would have 50 years ago, because that wasn't an option. So we would have spent more time at there's this book called Bowling Alone. Talks about the collapse of sort of American communal life. Used to be bowling clubs, knitting clubs, all kinds of clubs. And we don't have that as much anymore. And so in that environment, it's really easy for people to sort of sink down. And on social media, there's some really atrocious bullying that happens. And so, it does make me wonder, is there a sort of lack of emotional intelligence that we're cultivating by spending so much time in these artificial spaces rather than in real social spaces? It's definitely worth asking.
I think that's going to be a conversation for another episode.
Yeah.
Because on that note, And we are, if y'all want to hear us talk about more of that too, let us know. It might come out in our next episode. We might keep this conversation going. We were talking about emotional intelligence, and it was, we got there, and then we kind of went some other places, and it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, very good. All connected.
Yeah, if you guys really like our content, if you really like what we're talking about, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps our channel out. It helps us keep growing and doing what we're doing. We have some big news coming out in a couple weeks. We're going to drop out down to you guys probably next episode. Some big things have been happening at the Unzip Mind, and we are just forever grateful and just really appreciate everybody listening, everybody downloading, everybody subscribing. It has just helped us grow to what we're doing already.
Yep.
So cool. And we really appreciate it. So go ahead over to theunzipmind.com or our Facebook page. Subscribe. Buy a shirt if you want.
Got some good shirts.
We got some really good content. We got really good stuff. Yep.
Check it out.
Quality mugs.
Check it out. Thank you for listening. Until next week, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Adios.